Hi, this is Eternal King here bringing you another LOR video today. So I just finished going through my weekend play stats. So if you don't know, when you're a deck builder on Runeterra AR, it live tracks your games with any decks that you've registered on the website. So I can actually talk a little bit about after playing a fair bit over the last 2 days. Again, it's not healthy to play like straight morning through night, but you say you play 10 games, Saturday, 10 games Sunday, something like that. Because again, LOR matches in the Eternal format can take a while. I can kind of talk about what stats some of these lesser known archetypes were putting up and some of the results that surprised me. So I'm going to be like very honest and transparent about my win rates in this video and the decks that I was playing and the kind of less so the opponents I was running into, because I wasn't seeing too much that I found to be kind of remarkable or exciting. So first up, Thralls. Thralls I played one game with over this weekend and won that game, and that's kind of about as good of a performance as you can expect out of Thralls. It is an old archetype in Eternal that is good at one specific thing. It does Promising Future, right? So Promising Future onto a landmark is the best way to steal a game with competitive Thralls. The rest of the deck, if you want me to go over, it's one clock hand. 3 sands of time is mandatory. Again, the Promising Future is a special spice that I think you need to steal games with this deck. Thalia, Dark Lord Inquisitor, Succumb to the Cold, which is a frostbite and a landmark generator. Preservationist, this was a buffed card, so it'll advance any allied landmark 3 rounds, so it is worth running. Rockbear Shepherd, obvious staple card. Lysandra, Time in a Bottle. Harbinger of Thralls, Clockwork Curator, 3 Sisters, and Frozen Thralls. So you'll notice that in this particular deck, I'm not bothering with any sort of stabilization. So there is no Blighted Ravines, which you typically run in this deck. That is intentional. When it comes to the highly competitive playground of Eternal, you're either, if you're memeing or you're playing an off-meta archetype like this that's on the weaker side of the spectrum, you just gotta give her. Like, you just gotta go for it. So, like, just jam the Promising Future onto your Frozen Thrall, duplicate it with Thalia, and then win the game with the double Thrall proc that you get off of that, right? The double Frozen Thrall. You just have to give her, right? So like, don't even bother trying to stabilize. Frostbites are okay, so you can, entomb something that's problematic or frostbite something that's problematic. You could, save a Thrall with a Fury of the North, or, Succumb to the Cold something. But beyond that, don't even worry. Just, chump up the board with Harbinger of Thralls, chump up the board with Clockwork Curator, with Lysandra, with Rockbear Shepherd, Preservationist, and Dark Lord Inquisitor, and then just don't worry about the rest of it. So again, it won the one game that it played, which is really all I wanted out of that archetype. I told you before, when it comes to Deep and when it comes to Lurk, I can't even steal a single game. Now, part of it's just I'm bad with those decks, and Thralls have been one of my decks that I've performed decently with in the past when there was more room for that deck to succeed, so I know the ins and outs a little better. Spawn won its game. And so that was good. That's kind of all that I wanted out of this deck in terms of the Eternal format. So Watchful Idol, Answered Prayers, Eye of God, Form Up, Broadwing, Gentleman's Duel, Shield of Durand, Technical Smash, Sea's Voice, Eloy, Biru Lookout, your Draw, your Jarvan, and then your top end. So pretty straightforward there. Make a big tentacle, keep the tentacle alive, drag things with Petricite Broadwing. Sometimes you just Shield of Durand the Broadwing. Very straightforward deck. Exceptionally straightforward deck in terms of what it does. And it performed admirably, right? About as well as I could hope it would. Talking about Shrooms. Shrooms, was on the weaker side of the spectrum in just my playtesting. I took the mirror match, so like I guess I could feel good knowing that my Shrooms deck was better than the other person who was running the exact same deck, because I was playing the mirror match. And yeah, I took the mirror match. But then when I started running into other archetypes, I started running into problems. So I think it landed on like a 60% win rate, like not great. It just didn't feel that good. It felt like there were gaps in terms of the way that this deck should be run, and it didn't feel like an optimization issue so much as it just felt like a power issue. Because again, like I said, I won the mirror match, so clearly, like, in terms of the other ways people would have built this deck, mine was superior, but that's like saying that a bad deck is slightly better than another bad deck. Like it's not, winning any records essentially. Again, other things that did really well, Azirarelli just 100%ed, right? So however many games I played with Azirarelli this weekend, it was like 6 or 8, just basically 100%, no losses, because this deck doesn't lose unless you're specifically prepared to answer it. And that's kind of the power of my OG shell. So yeah, this deck just didn't lose because the opponent didn't have the Mystic Shot for the Aurelia, or they didn't have, more specifically, the landmark removal for Emperor's Army on 2, Emperor's Dais on 2. They just didn't have the answers. They didn't have the ping for the Sparring Student when it first comes down. They just, period, full stop. I just got to, like, essentially solitaire out and just win every game, because that's what this deck does well. So obviously, Azirarelli being one of the best decks in the format still, no surprise there. And when a good player plays a bad deck, you kind of have like a 50-50 chance into them. When a good player plays a good deck, it tends to look more like a 100% win rate. Like with my Rise deck being like 80% on average, and then Azirarelli being 100% just from this weekend of play. You could call that like a little bit of luck, but again, it tends to win a lot. It won enough for a lot of people to steal my deck idea and essentially say that it's one of the best decks in the format. Moving on from that, we did play some PNZ Noxus Burn Aggro, which I mentioned in the last video. So that won all the games that it played. Annie Jin won its game. So like various Shadow Burn won its game. So like all these different types of Burn Aggro. We were 100% out with every single version of Burn Aggro that we played. We played 4 different kinds of aggressive burn decks, and they all just won. So like 100% across the board with Burn Aggro, Shadow Burn, PNZ Noxus Burn, and then Draven Riven Burn. Every single kind of burn that I played, I just won every game. Similar to Azirarelli being like 6 games at 100%. I won 6 games across the various types of Burn Aggro, like this one, that one, Annie Jin, and then so basically 6 games altogether on that front. And then we had some some memes, right, that also did well. So essentially this kind of old school shell I had of summoning husks, and the whole point is to crumble husks. Only played 1 game of mid-range control, and so basically did exactly what I wanted to. I ran into deep, and they played the leveled Nautilus, and then all I had to do was crumble a husk for 4 mana, and that killed their 7 mana level champion, and the game was over. This deck does one thing and one thing well, which is turbo level Evelynn, and Evelyn's a nice mid-range threat, and then when the opponent tries to go over your head, you just crumble whatever they're doing. That's the entire point of the deck. Feels just as good as when I first built it. I would have to, again, I remember originally when I built it, I felt that Eris was slightly better than Salter, so you run the 3 Erises and 1 Salter because it's more of a proactive play, as opposed to just playing like a vanilla 1-3 that doesn't do anything. You get too many of these in your hand, it just feels awkward. It's not a great card. This is generally a better card. But again, that would take more testing for me to confirm that, like, after all these, if I built this like a year ago or whatever, that would still be the case. But yeah, it was still admirable. Evelyn's still, a real archetype. Absolutely. And then, yeah, the only big winners being Deep and Lurk, which I can't for the life of me play currently in this meta. But everything else, it was just basically straight wins. And then you had sort of these middling decks like Shrooms and then Transform, where their win rates were like still positive enough to climb with. By any standard, but like not good enough for me to like, recommend these memes like Shrooms and Transform and stuff like that. But still playable, absolutely. But yeah, that's my kind of my coverage for the 2 for this weekend. Essentially just like not losing at all in the last 2 days against people as far as the deck tracker is concerned, and then obviously I don't think it properly counts things like, I don't know, sometimes it counts concedes, sometimes it doesn't. It's a little weird. If someone just like rage plugs on you, I don't think it counts it. It doesn't count the win. But it definitely counts my concedes for sure. But for the most part, yeah, we were just like straight taking games. And it was a fun weekend to play where we got to play, some competitive stuff, some non-competitive stuff, some mid-range, and then yeah, obviously aggro being a very good way to punish bad players, like just players who aren't confident in their deck building. Aggro's always been very, very good at punishing them across the board. So whether it is like Burn Aggro or Zero Rally or what have you. If I had advice for people when it comes to deck building to in a competitive sense, I guess that's another good way to go through the video. That like if I was to build something right now, fresh, right, something that I don't have like a year of experience behind me with, how do you make that as ladder viable or as competitive as you possibly can in the Eternal format? So I'm going to take a quick peek see here of what might be fun to build, and then we'll just live build it, and you know, that'll give you a good sense of how you want to be approaching your own builds to be at least mildly competitive. And not everything is equally competitive, because some things are inevitably better than others in terms of the current you know, meta game of LOR. But yeah, let's say Gwen's a little easy, so we'll stay away from Gwen. Let's try to pick something really flavorful. I really want to think about Jax. There's this thing that's been driving me crazy where, like, for whatever reason, Jax is just gone from Eternal right now, and I don't know why. So let's do Jax. Yeah, definitely let's do Jax. So I know that Fish Fight goes in, right? So Fish Fight was changed from 2 mana to 3 mana. I don't think it matters. I still think it's a great card. You need to run Fish Fight. And then you also want Challenge. You also want a Transing Lure, right? And so these are kind of your pretty staple parts of the archetype. And then we could probably say Equipment. We're going to want equipment cards. Now it's only going to show us the cards that have equipment in the title, but I actually want the cards that generate equipment. So obviously Combat Cook. Okay, it's Improvise. That's the name of the keyword. So we want Improvise on our deck. Definitely need Improvise. This is mandatory. That one's bad. Stay away from that. That one's bad. Stay away from that. Typically, you do run the heal one now, and I'm someone I Improvise. Yeah, it's questionable if I need this one too. Probably not. Okay. Then you're going to need your Forge units. This one's pretty important for stabilization. You always run Heartblood Mender. You don't usually run the Forge. You do run the 1-drop pretty much every single time, and then you always see the 2-drop as well. So this is good. This is okay. But then, you know, this isn't enough on its own, right? So if this is like, if I look at this, and this is like the base shell of what a Jax deck is, you need to do more than what is expected of you in terms of the archetype. Again, Three Sisters, it's a nice responsive card that's going to give you a little bit of interaction with the opponent's board. So again, Three Sisters in Freljord in the Eternal format specifically is never a bad card. You run it in most of your mid-range decks. It's never a bad thing to have. I kind of love it. And yeah, and this is kind of where you start looking into the things that you can do to make the archetype slightly more stable, right? You could, you know, Parts Made Whole. Typically, you wouldn't see draw, right, in an equipment deck, and people moved away from it because they were so tempo focused. But like, it's evident now that the tempo version of equipment is not working. So usually when you see something not working, you have to pivot in the Eternal format to make that sustainable again. Like, you just have to. So yes, absolutely. Run the draw. I would say just do it. Discard the equipment and then draw, and then that's fine. And for that reason, you can feel confident to run more equip cards. But yeah, these are typically the things you want to be thinking about. And like Sky Splitter and Troll Chant, these used to be staple cards for Freljord midrange. Increasingly, unless I'm running something like, you know, a Caitlyn or a Teemo deck where you have to strike, I'll actually not run these cards anymore. They're just not high value enough a lot of the time. But you could also think of things like Darkened Spear. If you want to shuffle in buffs and you just want the guaranteed equipment. But again, you're going to be generating a lot of equipment in this deck. Absolutely. So you might not want to be doing that. But this is actually not a bad shell. So like, you know what? Let's play a game with this, like win or lose, with this random equipment deck that we just built. And I think that might be kind of fun. I need one more unit, so what is like a good unit that I can jam as a one of here? The first time I'm equipped, creating a forecast copy of me in hand, granted the equipment stats. That's kind of fun. I don't know, I'll put one in. It's not going to like make or break the deck. It's okay, let's try that. Let's try this like archetypal Jax midrange, and then I'll just like live record the loss for you without any testing, because I just want to see how it works. You know, here I am, I'm saying that like I can go weekends and win straight, but this is okay. So bounces are typically bad for equipment decks. Bounces, and then obviously if they have some sort of on curve ping, that's going to feel very, very bad. Okay. Let's start off with the... Oh no.
Jana, I answer.
Yeah.
A broken thing is a waiting thing.
Okay, let's play this.
Bertha, please tell us a story.
The spirit of the mountain was working at his forge.
Yeah, so we'll see if they Mystic Shot this. No? Okay, so this protects against Snap Mystic, which is exactly what we want. Now we can't Snap Mystic. And then, yeah, we'll just full commit.
Let me change up my style.
We'll just full commit here. There's no reason not to. I don't know. Whatever. I don't really need these bodies, so I'm just going to go, you know. Do you want to take value blocks? Go for it. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That attack allowed us to push for 2 more, which is great. I'm pretty content to pass here and have them float the mana.
His fire burns bright in our hearts.
Yeah, please, like, don't do that.
You got nothing I can't handle.
Okay, there you go. So literally a blind, you saw it here first, literally a blind build,
Never gets old.
just like knowing the Eternal format and blind building. And let's take a look and let's see how he built out his yeah, a lot of one-ofs. So like you see something like this, and this is someone who just has no idea like how to build the deck. Now, of course, you say, oh, it's a Seraphine deck, and Seraphine wants you to play one of everything. So, like, I know it's Turbo Seraphine, but even for a Turbo Seraphine deck, this looks a little lost in terms of what it's trying to do. So, yeah. Pretty free game overall. A lot of the time I'll add people, too. So, let's do a quick review of this Snap Jax build. I would run this. Just like I'll tell you right now that just based on the way that I built this with the 3 sisters, the Weaponsmith, the Entrancing Lure, the Favorite Arson, the Jax, the Fish Fight, the Bladesmith, this guy, that guy, Cook, and then discarding the equipment when I have too many of them, Heart, Bloodmender, Ornn, and then the one kind of funny Mogwai Colossus, you know, inclusion. I'm fine with this, right? Like, I can just run this, and in fact, I would say that this is more or less just as strong as my Undir, right? Undir PNZ with Undir Victor, right? And the way that I built this out, you'll see some hallmarks to the way that I build decks that's very similar in terms of like power scaling of what I think a mid-range Freljord deck should be. But that feels good. You know, Seraphine's very competitive. So again, like that's just a good turnout, right? Yeah, so like a little extra there in terms of like you got to talk about my stats for the weekend. You got to talk about my existing decks and how they're doing this weekend. And then you also got to see me take a live game with a fresh brew that felt like exceptionally strong and has 0 deck tracking right now for Eternal. Alright guys, take care. This has been fun.